Evening. I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and welcome to my latest video. It's been a little bit of time since my last video when we reviewed the past winters, specifically the abnormally colder, brutally cold winters of the late 1970s, as well as just a comparison over the decades from a colder period in the 1960s and 1970s into the early 80s to a warming period into the 1990s, 2000s. This is a special video tonight that I really want to get out to everybody. This is pretty funny here. I don't think people will be looking necessarily like this at this point in time because we're still in November after all, but it's definitely going to be turning colder. I call this video the sweet spot, and I'm going to let you know why I call it the sweet spot when we talk about cold in the eastern United States. So why is this video called the sweet spot? Let's get right to it. If we look at the latest GFS ensemble forecasting system, the GEFS, the 500 millibar geopotential height and anomaly forecast, starting off with next Wednesday, the 16th of November on the left. And then on the right-hand side, I'm showing you those same 500 millibar geopotential height anomaly forecast for the 17th of November, next Thursday. Really, what I want you to take away from these images is the upper air pattern. All right. I did in my previous videos mention, for example, in 1976, the position of this shortwave trough. Where was that? Or I'm sorry, the shortwave ridge, rather. Excuse me. Where was the shortwave ridge axis setting up in relation to that very cold winter? And I'm not comparing this particular chart with that brutally cold winter of 1976, so definitely not comparing it as far as the sensible weather effects. But I am going to really zone in here on where this ridge axis is located. And you see it's right along that west coast of North America, from generally Oregon northward all the way up along the western coast of Canada, right on up into Alaska itself. So this is a very cold pattern. This is the GFS ensemble forecasting system with the ridge across the off the coast there of the west coast of North America. Downstream of that ridge, you've got this deep trough which sets up and these lower than normal height anomalies. And then over here on the right for next Thursday, we see a very similar pattern with the upper level ridge axis right along the coastal areas of western North America up to Alaska. And now look at how the blue is filling in. By next Thursday, we got a upper level low situated in the northern parts of Hudson Bay and eastern Canada. And we basically have flipped the script. Negative height anomalies over here in Hudson Bay, positive height anomalies over into the Gulf of Alaska and along the western coast of North America. So this is the GEFS, this is the EPS, European Prediction System, and it's very, very similar. These models, these ensemble models are showing very similar patterns. And here it is again. Where's that sweet spot? The ridge axis right along the west coast of North America. Again, with the ridge axis right along that coastline like this, we've seen some pretty historically cold periods when we get such a configuration. An example of this would be in 2014. Of course, I mentioned the late 1970s winters. And I'm going to do a little more research on this particular upper air pattern specifically soon. But in general, we have the upper level ridge axis. This is a highly amplified ridge there. And then we have that troughing again by this is late next Tuesday, the 15th of November, with lower than normal heights in the blue shading. And then if you look here on the right, the forecast from the European Ensemble Prediction System, the EPS, that ridge axis remains in place there along the immediate coast of western North America up to Alaska. And now look at how this blue shading has really filled in across parts of eastern North America. And this is next Friday morning, the 18th of November, this chart. So look at the comparisons here. GFS Ensemble Forecasting System, EPS, all showing a similar pattern with where that ridge axis is located. That's that sweet spot I'm talking about. Now, the Canadian model also showing a very similar pattern here, going out to 180 hours This one here on the right is a little bit further out in time. This is next Thursday, the 17th of November, showing the ridge axis a little bit further to the west, just into the Gulf of Alaska, straight up into Alaska itself. And then over here on the left, this is next Tuesday morning. We got a trough, closed low, situated south of the Aleutian Islands, and then this deep trough then tends to pump up the ridge downstream into parts of the western portions of Canada. And then you got this really strong flow from the northwest, from the higher latitudes, working its way into the lower 48. Look at here, next Thursday the 17th, according to the Canadian ensemble model. Again, look at how that blue fills in nicely. You got the upper level cold core low situated over Hudson Bay, northern Hudson Bay, and the flow and the difference in those heights between this closed upper level low and this anomalously strong upper level ridge. That results in more of a northwesterly wind flow straight from the higher latitudes from the Arctic into the lower 48. All right, so now let's talk about some other charts as we look ahead here in tonight's discussion. The 300 millibar wind speed forecast ranging from the 11th to the 15th of November. The upper left is showing the 11th of November. The center row here at the top, this is the 12th of November. The far upper right, 13 November. Bottom left, 14 November. And then this is the 300 millibar wind forecast for the 15th of November in the bottom right. So initially what we have this Friday, the 11th of November, Veterans Day, we do have a long wave trough which sets up with much colder air pouring into the base of the long wave trough across parts of the central U.S. for this Friday. And out ahead of this long wave trough, we do have a little bit of upper level ridging. We also do have that tropical subtropical storm Nicole, which is going to basically come up and ride these strong southerly winds right up through the spine of the Appalachians. And Nicole will work her way right on up into parts of New England, and it will accelerate fairly quickly. Why is that? Because then we get this jet max in place by Saturday afternoon. Very strong winds from the southwest here out ahead of that long wave trough axis. And so once that system, Nicole, gets picked up by this speed maximum in the jet core, or what's known as a jet max, that is going to be pushed along very quickly up through New England out to sea. Over here in the top right for next Sunday, the 13th of November, this is really when that change occurs in the temperature pattern, the upper air pattern and the temperatures as a result. You see the strongest jet max or highest wind velocities in the maroon coloring here from eastern Massachusetts up through Maine and then over to parts of the Canadian Maritimes up to the North Atlantic. And that's going to basically push Nicole well up out of the area, away from the United States rather quickly. But we do have some push of much cooler air now as this trough axis sets up over the Ohio River Valley by Sunday. And you get cooler air to come down from Canada. You got that nice strong upper level ridge, that long wave ridge situated off the immediate west coast of British Columbia. And then here in the bottom left, this is the forecast on 300 millibars, 30,000 feet where that jet stream resides for next Monday, the 14th of November. Noticing that upper level ridge over parts of western Canada with that downstream trough really deep. Got the closed low over Hudson Bay, and you get more of a northwesterly wind flow all the way from the northern plains to the east coast. Next Monday, the 14th of November, there's going to be some major changes to these temperatures, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. And then the forecast here at 300 millibars for the 15th of November, next Tuesday, showing cold air in place across much of the United States. We do see that ridging still taking place off of the northeastern Pacific Ocean. Now let's take a look at this thickness chart forecast from the 11th to the 15th of November 2022. Upper left again, 11 November. Middle top is 12 November forecast. Top right, 13 November. Bottom left, 14 November. And then bottom right is 15 November. So we're showing you the green areas where there's precipitation. The yellowish colors, the orange colors indicate the heaviest precipitation. And so let's go ahead and start with this one here in the upper left for this forecast for Friday. This Friday, the 11th of November. I'm showing a big area of rain, which is going to stretch from parts of eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, working its way northward into the Ohio River Valley, parts of eastern Kentucky, eastern Ohio, western PA, and it's going to be a wet go of it this Friday afternoon up in these parts. You notice that the track of this is the remnants of Nicole. After Nicole comes into Florida, it's going to then basically move northeast right along the spine of the Appalachian Mountains. Now, a couple days ago, the models had Nicole basically coming into Florida, central Florida, south central Florida generally, coming out over the Gulf of Mexico, then making a turn right into the Florida Panhandle for a second landfall, and then coming out and re-emerging east of Jacksonville, Florida, over the waters of the Western Atlantic, and then moving up along the Mid-Atlantic coast, up the East Coast in general. That's a completely different scenario for Eastern Virginia, for example. Now we're talking about a track. The model's trending further west with the track along the spine of the Appalachians. We do expect the heaviest rain to be associated with that specific track of the remnants of Nicole. There will be some very strong southerly winds from the Carolinas and the Eastern Virginia working its way up into Maryland, into parts of the DC area and Eastern PA. There's going to be some very strong southerly winds. There's going to be a major push of warm, moist tropical air briefly on Friday. There's going to be a strong cold front and a trough, which is going to be positioned just out to the west, starting to interact with the remnants of Nicole. The much colder air on Friday is situated over the northern plains into the south central U.S., working its way southeastward. Now, by Saturday, here in the top center, 12th of November, we have a very tight thickness gradient. See how closely packed these lines are to each other? Blue generally indicating much colder temperatures. When you see the blue lines, that's much colder air. The red lines is milder air. And what you have is now, look how fast Nicole is now up by Saturday, all the way up into the Canadian provinces by Saturday with a very intense extratropical low at this point in time. But all the rain is pretty much exiting the east coast of the United States by Saturday afternoon, with the colder air and that frontal boundary starting to work its way and making its passage through the area. Sunday, the 13th of November, this is really when things get colder for many in the eastern United States, as we see some lower thickness values working their way southward into parts of Virginia, into Kentucky, north of these. This particular area, the Virginia-Kentucky area, north of that, much colder temperatures across New England, especially up across the upper Midwest. And then notice there's another little area here by Sunday. It's a new storm system that develops off the coast and then wants to move right out to sea. So we could see some showers along eastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia coastline on Sunday. And then the forecast here in the bottom left for Monday, the 14th of November, showing a fairly dry pattern in place for much of the United States. We do see a closed low over Minnesota, a cold core low, and we do see the cold air pretty much influencing the weather from Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, eastern Colorado, right on down to Oklahoma, Arkansas, parts of the Ohio River Valley, Mid-Atlantic, up into New England. And then finally here, the forecast for next Tuesday, the 15th of November, we're seeing a very active southern subtropical jet stream, very active southern storm track with this kind of setup. This system here is going to be right off the Mid-Atlantic coast, a new area of low pressure, new storm system by next Tuesday, the 15th of November. And so we'll have to watch the track of this thing to see how close it gets to the coast or if it's further out to sea. But regardless, that colder weather pattern is in place for many of us across the United States. Speaking of colder air, let's look at these forecast high temperatures between the 11th and the 15th of November. Look at this in the upper left. This is the forecast high temperatures using the NOAA blend of models. These are in degrees Fahrenheit. Generally, the yellows and the orange colors indicate milder temperatures. The purple shading, the lighter pink, as well as the lighter blues and darker blues, those indicate colder temperatures. So what you got going on here this Friday, the 11th of November, we have a strong cold front generally positioned from eastern Canada right on down through parts of southeastern Indiana. The cold front stretches down to northern Arkansas, all the way down to North Texas by Friday. But out ahead of that front, It's going to be a very mild day. And why is that? We got some very strong southerly flow. We got a 980 millibar low, the remnants of Nicole, over parts of western North Carolina on Friday. A very strong system, so it's going to generate some fairly significant winds. You're going to get a strong low-level jet stream on the eastern side of the low, pumping in lots of warmth and moisture, lots of tropical type air. Briefly, and you can see this in the forecast high temperatures for Friday, mild all the way up the I-95 corridor up to the Massachusetts area for this time of year. And then here, look what happens here between Friday the 11th of November here in the upper left, and then this is the forecast highs for Saturday, the 12th of November. Notice how this milder air, these colors, these oranges and yellows are getting more narrow to the immediate East Coast by Saturday. This is Saturday, this is the forecast highs for Saturday. So the mildest temperatures are going to stretch basically from southern Georgia up to the Carolinas, eastern Virginia, right on parts of New Jersey, New York City, Connecticut, Rhode Island, that area, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Behind the front, that's when things change. Look at these temperatures. They're dropping. The darker blue here indicates high temperatures in the low 50s. Looks like the low 50s. Parts of Kentucky, the highs are going to be in the upper 40s and low 50s. Look at Tennessee. Highs in the 40s by Saturday. So you're going to feel that chill. And then over here in the upper right, we're showing the forecast high temperatures for this Sunday, the 13th of November. And look at all the blue shading now. What happened to this nice mild area? It's been pushed out to sea, to the east. And now much colder air is filtering in behind that strong front. And even these pinkish colors out here, these magentas up here, we're talking about high temperatures up in North Dakota in the teens and 20s by this Sunday, the 13th of November. Looking at the forecast here in the bottom left, forecast high temperatures for Monday, the 14th of November, showing a very similar pattern here. Very cold temperatures extending from the Pacific Northwest really all the way across. If you were to take a trip or a ride on Interstate 80 from Pennsylvania, Ohio, working your way through Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, down into parts of the western U.S., you're going to be on a cold trip there. And look how far south some of these chilly high temperatures get. Highs only in the 50s, for example, low 50s in Atlanta, Georgia by next Monday, the 14th of November. And then the bottom right here shows the forecast high temperatures for next Tuesday, the 15th of November. Look, nothing's changing here, is it? Most of the U.S. is dominated by very cold air as we head into the 15th of November. Look at the forecast low temperatures, the same time period, 11th to the 15th of November, 2022. Initially, on Friday morning, we have that milder push of air from Florida working its way northward to South Georgia, the eastern Carolinas to southeastern Virginia. The coldest air remains back just west of the Ohio River by Friday morning. And then the middle center, upper center here, shows forecast low temperatures for next Saturday morning, the 12th of November. Look how this milder air is just barely hanging on at this point. Colder air is moving in from the west, and these temperatures, it's just really impressive. I mean, we're looking at single-digit low temperatures by Saturday morning, the 12th of November, across parts of the Dakotas and even northern Nebraska. Looking at the forecast low temperatures here in the upper right for the Sunday, the 13th of November, now the cold air is made it all the way to the East Coast, including all the way down the Gulf Coast. You're going to be shivering down there in Biloxi, Mississippi. You're going to be shivering in New Orleans, and you're going to be shivering in Tallahassee by the time we get to Sunday morning, 13 November. And then look at the forecast here in the bottom left. This is a forecast low temps for Monday, the 14th of November. Look at how far south this chill gets, all the way to Florida and South Texas. Everybody's going to be feeling that chill in the air. And then finally here on the bottom right, the low temperature forecast for Tuesday, 15 November 2022. Again, very, very chilly conditions, pretty much coast to coast across the United States. Looking at these forecast temperature anomalies from 11 to 15 November 2022, the brighter maroonish colors and oranges indicate above normal temperatures. The greens, the blues, the purples, they all indicate below normal temperatures. So initially, this Friday, the 11th of November 2022, we see all the chill generally west of the Mississippi River. That's going to advance east to the Ohio River by Saturday, the 12th of November, just a small little sliver of above normal temperatures across the immediate East Coast up to New England. And then by this Sunday, the 13th of November 2022, look at this coloring scheme. Blues and greens and purples even. The purples indicate your most significant below normal temperature anomalies on the order of 20 degrees to 25 degrees Fahrenheit below normal for parts of the Dakotas by Sunday. Looking at Monday's forecast for temperature anomalies in degrees Fahrenheit, again, the whole United States is pretty much dominated by below normal temperature readings, and then finally over here in the bottom right, for the 15th of November, the coldest temperature anomalies are going to be situated back over the parts of the Dakotas into Montana and Wyoming and Idaho. And then below normal readings remain in place across the eastern U.S. for this upcoming a week from today, Tuesday the 15th of November. So what's really driving right now the pattern is the Pacific North American pattern teleconnection, as well as this Eastern Pacific Oscillation teleconnection. It's really striking to look at multiple models today and find a very similar situation here with a crashing negative. This is the EPO, Eastern Pacific Oscillation Forecast, and look at this thing. This is the European deterministic model. But I did take a look at the other models, GEFS deterministic, European ensemble, the EPS, the GEFS. Very similar forecast for the EPO, sharply negative EPO forecast. And then also, if you look at the Pacific North American forecast, the PNA, we've been talking about how negative it's been since late October into early part of November here. But now it's on its way back up, and the latest European deterministic model is showing more of a positive trend to the PNA from the 13th to like the 16th of November. So that's something to keep an eye on. Really, these are the two big dominant teleconnections right now. Looking at another wild card. This is interesting here. I took a look at this morning, and I had to do a double take. And look, I shared this on social media, and I'm not saying this is going to verify, but if it did, this would have significant implications for the weather in the U.S., specifically into December. So what we're showing you here is the stratospheric temperatures. So this is up to 30 hectopascals, and this is showing, this is this Friday here, this graphic. The blues indicate below normal temperatures up at that level in the stratosphere. The greens indicate above normal. The yellows indicate above normal temperatures in the stratosphere. And so what we're looking at is the shape of these white lines too. These are your height contours. And so the more stretched out this looks, that means the polar vortex in the stratosphere is more of a weakened state. It's stretched like a rubber band here. You notice how the orientation of the shape of this is really elongated, right? From the Arctic all the way down to the eastern portions of North America. Now, when we move ahead, the forecast of the GFS, we're looking here on the upper right on this Saturday, the 19th of November. No, I'm sorry. This forecast is for Saturday, the 19th of November. Yeah, it is. Okay, so by this point in time, we're seeing literally two specific vortices. So the vortex is forecast to go from a stretched event to a split vortex event. And when these splits occur with the polar vortex, this can lead to significantly cold and stormy weather for parts of Europe as well as parts of eastern North America. And so you can kind of see these closed height contours at the level, at the 30 hectopascal level. One's located here and the other's located over eastern Canada. And so this is really going to be interesting to watch to see how things unfold. And then the bottom graphic is the forecast for Monday, the 21st of November. And take a look at this. I mean, two distinct vortices as the polar vortex in the stratosphere has basically broken into two pieces. One vortex centered over eastern Canada, the other over Europe. I'm going to show you I probably should do that right now. Let me back out of this and let me show you before I move on and conclude tonight's video. I do have it right here. Okay, yeah. So this is the latest forecast. This is 18Z GFS. So this is even later. This is even later than the one I'm showing in the video here on the slide. But just kind of this is the forecast for Friday the 18th of November. See how elongated or stretched out this vortex is? And then let's just keep going through in time here. So this is the 19th of November. This is also the 19th of November. This is the 20th of November. This is the 21st of November. And you kind of just see the elongation now kind of working its way more towards Europe by the 20th and 21st of November. Let's keep moving forward here and I'll show you what's going to happen here. All right, so by this point in time, the 21st of November, 18 Zulu, we now have two distinct vortices. We have a dominant vortex over eastern North America, and then we have another vortex, another lobe of the vortex, but it's not as strong over parts of Europe by Monday the 21st, according to this GFS forecast. And that's really what happens. I mean, this one over eastern Canada, eastern North America becomes a dominant vortex from this polar vortex split. And this could have some real significant consequences in December for parts of Eastern North America and Europe. Way too early to speculate on what's going to happen here. I will say this, that the GFS model has performed better. It has performed better recently, specifically with this stretched event. Let me get my laser pointer again. Specifically with the stretched event right here, the GFS was calling for this stretching back in late October. Okay, so at least 10 to 14 days in advance, GFS was seeing this. Now, I can't tell you if GFS is the model of choice here for the stratospheric behavior, the vortex behavior, but I can tell you that it just recently performed better. So out of all the other models, it was the first to pick up on this stretching event we're seeing now, as well as just, the persistence of it. And it's actually been pretty good, the GFS model. And so I'm going to be curious to see what happens. I did take a look at the European vortex forecast, polar vortex forecast, and it's not showing a split like this. All right, or a split like this down here. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. Here is the NOAA, the latest Climate Prediction Center forecast for temperature departure probabilities. This is impressive. People have been sharing this on social media the last couple days. The whole United States is forecasted to have some form of probability of below normal temperatures between 14 and 18 November 2022, with the highest probability of below normal temperatures generally from Virginia, working our way to the Ohio River Valley, and then the Missouri River Valley. Look at this, right in the bullseye of the highest probability, 90 to 100% probability of below normal temperatures for this part of the U.S. And then look at Alaska. Look at how much the probability is for above normal temperatures in Alaska. And that has to do with that upper level ridge. That has to do with this upper level ridge right here. Okay. Get this strong upper level ridge working its way northward to Alaska. It's going to bring that anomalously warmer weather with it beneath the ridge axis. But it's real interesting stuff. And then here on the right is the forecast for 16 to 22 November. So the highest probability of below normal temperatures across the upper Midwest, the lower Ohio River Valley, working its way towards West Virginia, all the way to the East Coast. And above normal again for parts of Alaska by the 16th to 22nd of November. Here are my final thoughts on tonight's video. Boy, I tell you what, this is a real interesting pattern. And again, based on past research, I literally just looked at this when I was researching for the brutally cold winters of the late 1970s, those videos, as well as the just the comparisons of the upper air patterns of past colder winters across the United States. And just based on the research that's been done, the placement of the upper level ridge axis right along that west coast of North America, that's going to favor colder than normal temps across the eastern U.S. And that's why I call this video the sweet spot again. And all the models are showing this, okay? It doesn't matter if it's GEFS, EPS, or the Canadian ensemble. For next week, it's going to be much colder. We're going to feel much colder from what we've been seeing. So, and again, just as a reminder, the PNA and the EPO, those are the dominant teleconnections right now. And they appear to be the main ones influencing the weather over the next 7 to 10 days. Now, we'll be keeping a close eye on this stratospheric polar vortex forecast. I'm not going to lie. It's always interesting in winter to pay attention to that. So in general, GFS indicating that potential split like I showed you. It's not a guarantee, as other models are not as robust with this possibility. The other models are mainly leaning towards that stretching or elongation continuing into late November. GFS did have, again, had a really good forecast for the current stretching event. So we're expecting big temperature changes starting this Sunday morning, the 13th of November, for the East Coast. And we expect these colder temperatures to remain generally in place through about the 22nd of November. There's a little bit more up in the air depending on the behavior of the polar vortex beyond the 22nd of November, on whether things are going to recover and become milder again across the east. There's conflicting signals of the longer range guidance, but in general, we look at 13 November this Sunday through the 22nd. It's going to be a cold period for many across the United States. And then we also have to watch out for a more active pattern, a more active southern storm track with that subtropical jet stream really feeding in some moisture with the colder air to the north. The baroclinic zone is setting up generally from the southeast right up to the mid-Atlantic. When you look at this, I'm just going to look at this, the NOAA outlook. When you have an active subtropical jet stream, you tend to get disturbances that move across the southern part of the U.S., and then they end up coming up off the southeast coast and off the mid-Atlantic. We don't really have that blocking high over the North Atlantic. Let me go back to the upper level chart. So we don't really see the blocking high as much over in this location. There's a little bit of, this is a low. So we don't have that negative NAL going on. So where, you get that high latitude blocking in the North Atlantic. And if that were the case, that could potentially pin developing storm systems further back along closer to the coast here. But just looking at these forecasted temperature anomalies or probabilities, if you get extremely below normal temperatures here back with colder thicknesses, and then you got that warmer air over the Gulf Stream, you're going to have a baroclinic zone that's going to generally set up. That baroclinic zone is that division point or division line between warmer moisture air here over the Gulf Stream off the Western Atlantic, over the waters of the Western Atlantic, and the much colder continental air coming down from the north. And so I'm not going to be shocked if we get maybe 2 to 3 systems that move through the pattern, generally up through parts of the southeastern U.S., providing rain, a very chilly rain across the mid-Atlantic. Right now, it doesn't look cold enough to have any surprise snowstorms across the mid-Atlantic. If the storm were to move far enough north up along the New England coast, it's potential you could get some snow up there. But in general, looking like a cold rain from the mid-Atlantic south with some of these systems. So that's all I've got tonight. That was my last bullet for the final thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the video tonight. Really looking at this change and really looking at the upper air pattern as a whole. I think one of the big players to all of this in the longer range is, how long does this ridge axis maintain itself? How long does this ridge remain this strong? If this were to weaken, then that jet stream would become more zonal west to east, and we would return to a bit of a milder regime in late November. But I'm really going to be interested in the overall placement and how long this pattern persists. And I'm also going to be really interested in looking at this stratospheric polar vortex and seeing how the models handle it over the extended period of time. All right, that wraps things up this evening. I certainly thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules and listening in on the Spotted Weather YouTube channel. That's all I got for right now, everybody. I wish everybody a pleasant evening. Hope to get these teleconnections discussions going again here soon. Okay? All right, that wraps it up. Everybody take care. Until next time, God bless everyone.